Thank you again for joining us tonight. My name is Barry Erickson and Community Engagement Coordinator here at Wheaton Public Library. Tonight we have with us Rachel Korosik in the Leishman Center for Culinary Health at Northwestern Medicine's Kishwaukee Hospital in DeKalb. She will tell us more about the programs that they offer, those that they serve, and the classes that they have available to you. And I know, Rachel, that you've got a busy hour of cooking ahead for us. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the screen over to you. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. We're really excited about watching this cooking demonstration with you.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having us, Barry, and thanks to Barry and the Wheaton Public Library for inviting us to come join you tonight. So thank you. I know we have quite a large attendance, so we're really excited to have this many people interested in 5 ingredients or less. But before we get started on that, just a little bit of background. So my name is Rachel, and I am your instructor for today's program, and we are joining you from Northwestern Medicine's Leishman Center for Culinary Health. And so think of us as a home economics teaching kitchen. And so we our home base is Northwestern Medicine Kishwaukee Hospital. So we're actually all the way out in DeKalb, Illinois, but we service all of the Northwestern medicine regions. So we do virtual cooking classes to people up in Waukegan, down in the south side of Chicago, and then all the way out here in DeKalb. So we're really excited to have you joining us today. And what is the Leishman Center? So what you can't see around me is a 1,500 square foot teaching kitchen that has many different student stations. But since 2020, we really kind of sat there and we've only been doing virtual classes. We just got the go ahead from the hospital, and we're excited to announce that we'll start doing in-person classes again in here starting next month, and just slowly building how many we can do as the time goes on, but we're also keeping our virtual programs. And so these are things that I know, living out towards Wheaton, the likelihood of you coming out to DeKalb for a class maybe is a little slim. However, our classes are all free of charge. There's no charge associated to our programs. We just ask that you register. And what we teach is we have a whole array of topics, a plethora of different topics. We focus on everything from disease prevention, so talking about things that are heart healthy, like the DASH diet, the Mediterranean diet, just basic heart health topics. And then we do eating for diabetes with a diabetes educator. We have touched upon eating for bone health, but really what we focus on is just eating real whole foods. Because no matter what we're looking at, whether we're eating for heart health, diabetes friendly, eating to prevent cancer, we're looking at whole foods, we're looking at plants. So our job is simply to add more plants into our students' lives. And so some of our classes could just be focused on tomatoes or just focusing on winter squash. So I hope that you can find some of our classes. I know Barry's going to send out information afterwards, along with all of the recipes we're doing today, as well as information on how to sign up for classes, because we'd love to have you. So our classes range in time from 15 minutes to 1 hour. And so whatever works for you and your schedule. And then just quickly, a quick point about me. So I am the lead of the Leishman Center. And so I have been here since before we actually broke ground. So I've been with Northwestern Medicine for 9 years, and the Leishman Center's been here for 8 years. And I got brought on specifically for this topic. So I am not a dietitian. My background is in public health, but we work with clinicians, nurses, physicians, dietitians to give you the best programming possible. So without further ado, let's begin talking about 5 ingredients or less. Feel free to put into the chat. Marla is here. She's one of the nurses in our department. She's here with me tonight moderating our class. So feel free to put in the chat if you have any questions, and she'll field those to me.
Rachel, they want to know if you specifically have any programs that are eating to manage your cholesterol.
We haven't had any programs based around that. We do a lot with DASH diet, Mediterranean diet, just like heart healthy
Basic heart
101,
health.
basic heart health, but we have not touched upon cholesterol specifically. It's something I can bring up to our dietitian, our lead dietitian, and we can see if there's a class there that she wants to develop with us. So yeah, we love hearing from you guys. So thank you. All right, so cooking with 5 ingredients or less. 5 ingredients or less recipes. You know, why we have these programs, why we do these, and we try to offer them in our normal calendar is because we're asking our students to cook with real whole ingredients as often as possible, because we know the more we cook, the healthier we are. The more we stay away from packaged and processed and restaurant quality food, we know the less salt, sugar, and fat that's in our diet. So as we ask our students to cook with us, we also know that that's a big task. So we need these 5 ingredient recipes in the back of our pockets for those days that we just do not feel like it, for those days that you just want to run through the drive-through. So just some really simple recipes. And tonight we're going to be doing one tray dinner. We're going to be doing a salad or light lunch, and we're going to be doing a breakfast. So the first recipe we're going to be doing, and I should start by saying 5 ingredients, not including olive oil, salt, and pepper. You have to give us those. We need a little bit of something. So olive oil, salt, and pepper, those are not included in the 5. So we're going to start with a 1-pan salmon, broccoli, and sweet potato recipe. So you may be thinking to yourself, okay, it's August 1st and this feels very fall. And you're right, it does. But the truth is broccoli around us, we're out in a farming community out here in DeKalb, broccoli is starting to become available. But as we go through the recipe, I will be able to share with you things that you can add now in this season. But as you know, next month is September, I wanted to give something that you could use here in the upcoming future. So the first thing that we're going to do for this 1-pan meal is we are going to get a large cookie sheet and we're going to lay parchment paper over the cookie sheet. Now, you don't have to have parchment paper. Everything would work just fine on the basic pan. However, we don't want a lot of cleanup. We want it to just kind of everything to effortlessly fall off. So if we're already taking, the time to make a nice dinner with just 1 pan, trying to simplify our life, we are going to also try to simplify the dishes. So what we're going to add to this is 2 sweet potatoes. And so I wanted to show you, I already have these cut up, and you'll see that in the recipe, when you get that, it says 1-inch cubes. Now, the truth of the matter is, we are most of us are home chefs, we're home cooks. We are not always going to get everything precise, and that's okay. So however you start cutting it and you find your pieces are a little larger or a little smaller, just make sure all the pieces are very similar in size. And remember that the smaller the pieces, those will cook faster, and the larger pieces will cook a lot longer. So I have a preheated oven, 425 degrees. Yeah, do we have a question, Marla?
Rachel, if there was fish allergies and they needed to substitute the salmon, what would you substitute that with?
That's a really good question. So I think with that, I would probably take off the glaze to start. But I would do like Nestle and turkey sausages, I think would be really nice with the sweet potato and with the broccoli. I think that if you wanted to do that would be fine. You may not have to cook it as long, but I think turkey sausage would be really nice. If you wanted to do, I know this sounds odd, but there's a tubed polenta product that you can get. And if you slice it and you lay it on a tray like this, it actually crisps up really nicely. But I would probably go towards like a turkey sausage, leaning more towards poultry rather than the red meat. Good questions. Or you can just have a nice bed of vegetables and crack a couple eggs on with, 10 minutes left, and then you can enjoy it with just some eggs, getting a little more protein. So, all right. So now I wanted to just show how I cut this sweet potato. Anything that rolls makes me a little nervous if we're working with students who aren't comfortable with knives. And so whenever we have anything that rolls, we like to cut it down the center lengthwise. And I like to lay it down on a good flat base. And so that way, when we're doing our cutting, nothing's rolling, we can kind of handle it. I always take off the ends that look just a little bit sad, anything that looks a little wrinkly or dried.
Rachel, that was one of the questions. Any tips on making cutting the sweet potato easier?
Oh.
And then
Oh,
you
perfect.
started into that.
Good, yeah. And so we teach knife skills in here. Just very basic knife skills, kind of knife skills 101. But now with this, once we have that flat base cut side down on our cutting board, what I like to do is just kind of make some strips. You can look and make sure they're about, are they a little thicker? Make sure they're all about the same size. Again, ideally looking for about 1-inch cubes. But again, just how I would like to teach students is, how does it fit on a fork? How is it going to be presented when you put it on a plate? You don't want these huge wedges that you're having to take a bite of, maybe cutting. I like to think, how will it fit on a fork? Now, once we have our strips, that's kind of thick, so I like to cut it down again. And then anytime we want to turn anything into a dice, we have to make it into a strip, turn it to the side. And we cut it, and this is how I have it, my 1-inch cube dice. Now you'll notice I have the skin of my sweet potato on. So if you have a sweet potato that's looking really sad, really tired, really dry, feel free to peel it. But we really like to encourage students to leave the peel on whenever they can, give it a good wash, because that's extra fiber. And we know a high fiber diet is a diet that is beneficial for our heart, beneficial for reducing our likelihood of developing certain types of cancer, specifically colorectal cancers. And then also it's really good for managing blood sugars. So we like to leave the peel on for fiber. All right, so I have my sweet potato that I'm gonna add to my pan. And then I also have broccoli. So with the potatoes, if you wanted to use just fingerling potatoes, regular potatoes, cut up into a nice dice, you could do that. I love broccoli in this dish. And it's a meal that my little kids love to eat. But if you don't love broccoli, or it's, you have green beans in your garden, feel free to use green beans. Just know that the green beans will take a lot less time. So you'll have to start the potatoes in the oven, then add your green beans. All right, so for cutting broccoli, I like to take off the stem, but I set it to the side. I don't necessarily get rid of it. And then I always cut my broccoli from the bottom. And I kind of first just try to find where those florets naturally separate. Once I find those florets, you could leave it whole. Or if, again, we're kind of thinking we want it to be about the same size, we want them all to be about the same size. We want them all to cook and mingle with those sweet potatoes. So I'm going to break these down just in half. And so this is what I did with our broccoli. And now these stems, the stems of broccoli are actually my favorite part. If you're familiar with kohlrabi, it tastes very much like kohlrabi. It tastes different than broccoli. You can actually see like a ring going around your broccoli stem. And then instead of taking a peeler, what I do is I just take a little paring knife, and then I can it naturally usually pulls down a little bit. Whenever we're on camera, of course, things don't always happen exactly we want them to, but you can peel it. And then what you can do is you can cut this up into chunks, roast it, or I love to just eat it. I just love to eat it raw. So this is a great tip for not just wasting, food, really good food. This is my favorite part of broccoli. So if you've never tried it, I urge you to try it. If you wanted to add a little pinch of salt, this is a treat. This is one of my favorite things. All right, so I'm going to add my broccoli now to my pan with my sweet potatoes. And we're going to start by just roasting it. So there's rules to roasting, and this applies to roasting anything. When we roast vegetables, we want a nice 400 to 450 temp. We want it to be a high temperature to really draw out the sugars of whatever it is that we're cooking. Then we need to make sure that everything can kind of have its own space on the pan, because if things are kind of crammed, they'll start to steam and we're not going to draw out those natural sugars and get any caramelization. We want to protect our vegetables. So whether you're roasting green beans, carrots, cauliflower, zucchini, we want to protect it with a little olive oil or oil. So you could use an avocado oil. We usually go towards the heart healthier fats. And so it says 1 to 2 tablespoons in your recipe. And so because we're virtual, I can use my bare hands. We always start with less because we don't want pools of oil on our parchment. We just want everything to look very lightly glazed. Just shimmery, very shimmery without pools of oil. And so this protects it going into that hot heat oven. So now what I'm going to do is just kind of make sure everything has room with the pan. Everything's cut about the same size. Obviously, we're going to have the differing broccoli that's bigger than the sweet potato, but that's okay. Sweet potatoes take a little longer. And then salt. So if you're on a very sodium restricted diet, then you don't have to add any salt. But if you wanted to add salt, I take a little pinch, nothing even close to a 1/4 or an 1/8 of a teaspoon. I go high and I just very lightly sprinkle a little teeny tiny bit of salt over my vegetables. Sprinkling high allows the salt to really just spread nice and evenly over it. And those little salt particles on our vegetables will actually help pull out those sugars. That's what roasting is. We're pulling out those sugars and making a nice caramelized, delicious vegetable. One thing that I love talking about cruciferous vegetables, which is broccoli and Brussels sprouts. So many people, grew up with these vegetables and hated them. But a lot of the time they were boiled back in the day. And how we treat our vegetables really depends on what they taste like. If we overcook and boil broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, it brings out the sulfur component. And so that's why we didn't like them. And now we have a huge generation of people who are thinking, wow, I love roasted vegetables. It's because we're drawing out the sweet. So how we cook the vegetable really affects the flavor. So now this is going to go into our oven for about 20 minutes. And we're going to put this in our 425-degree oven.
Rachel, do you have an opinion about a convection versus a regular oven?
So I'm married to a chef, and so my husband is a huge fan of convection ovens. Things cook quicker. You just have that great airflow. And so I think things just, ease of time, everything gets done easier. So say you're remodeling your house and you can get in a convection oven, awesome. If not, we cook with just a regular oven here. So good question. All right, so now, yeah.
Also, if you were going to use tahini instead of oil, is that healthier?
So tahini, I've never roasted with tahini. I think that tahini I love tahini I do love it in dressings. Tahini is a fat. It is also a healthier fat. I don't know comparatively olive oil versus tahini. I mean, because what it is little sesame seeds. I don't know the answer to that. So I like to always roast with just a little bit of olive oil. You can always cut down the amount if you're worried about that. We just are looking for barely any glisten. But yeah, good question. I've never tried that, but it's another healthier fat. I don't have that answer. I apologize. But good questions. I love it. Keep it coming. So now what we're going to do, let this roast. I wanted to do this in real time so you see how quickly this throws together. So I'm going to set my old-fashioned timer. Joe, our other instructor in here, and I love just old-fashioned timers. We always have problems with the ones that are battery operated. We love just the twist ones. So now what we're going to do is once this is done, after 20 minutes, we're starting to get a little caramelization on our vegetables. We're going to add our salmon and the glaze to our pan. And so I want to talk about salmon real quick. So I'm not sure how many of you are fans of salmon. I like to focus on salmon because it feels like it's the majority winner when we talk about, popularity of fish. I love it because of its omega-3 fatty acids. It's a good heart healthy fat. So heart healthy, in fact, that the American Heart Association recommends 2 servings of fish a week. And so a heart healthy fish, meaning tuna, meaning mackerel, herring, salmon, cod has some. And so I just love salmon because it's versatile and because most people enjoy it. If you're not a huge fan, you could substitute this with trout. I find trout to be very easy to sub with salmon. I'm looking at what else I wrote down. Mackerel, striped bass. Some of those are going to be a little harder to find. So I like trout and I like salmon. I find those both at Walmart, Aldi's. You can find them at Whole Foods, an array of different stores.
Rachel, what do you like to recommend for the omega-3s for someone with a fish allergy?
Yeah, so there's a ton of great options. So nuts. So definitely talk to your dietitian. Remember, I can't give individual advice, but as an educator, we love and we teach for omega-3s different types of nuts. So walnuts and almonds and cashews. Also looking at those healthy little seeds, like chia seeds are really great. Chia seeds are great. So that's kind of what I look for. And, avocado has a little bit. There's definitely ways to get in those good heart healthy fats through food sources. So also talk to your, dietitian or physician if you're curious about how much you would need. That is not something I can answer, but those are what we look at, those nuts and little seeds. So salmon. Most of the time we're going to be getting maybe that Costco or Jewel Osco frozen bag of salmon. Rule of thumb, if you have it in your freezer and you're a planner, then what you're going to do is pull out the bag of salmon if you want it all thawed, put it in your refrigerator, and it takes about 24 hours to thaw. Now, say you're not a planner for dinner, which that is me. I have 2 little boys. I'm always running around. What am I going to do for dinner? Even though this is what my husband and I do. Everyone does it. What you want to do, take your fillets, however many you want, run them under cold water, constant cold water in the sink for about 5 minutes. We don't want to add any heat to that water because then we'll start the cooking process of the fish, and that actually will become food like dangerous. And so what we're looking for is just cold water running under that running water, and it'll thaw in about 5 to 10 minutes. So once you have your fish thawed or you're buying fresh, and I guess we can talk about fresh. If you're looking at fresh fillets, we want to make sure we have a springy, firm fish. We want to make sure there's no discoloration, no tears, no rips, nothing that looks mushy. And salmon and fish overall shouldn't smell fishy. If it does, then that could be an indicator that it's maybe not as fresh or not as great of quality as you thought. And so that's what we're looking for with fresh fish. So once we have that, I only have 2 fillets because it's just Marla and I here today, but the recipe calls for 4 salmon fillets. What I like to do is before I put it on my pan, I like to take a paper towel and I like to blot off any extra moisture off the top of my salmon. What this allows us to do is get a nice flaky, crisp topping to our salmon. That excess moisture can actually make it a little soggy, so we want to remove that. So that's all we're going to do with the salmon. We just have to blot it. I'm going to set this to the side, wash my hands, and we're going to quickly make the glaze, and then we are going to start making our other recipes. Let us know if you have a question. Now's a great time.
Rachel,
Yeah.
did you provide the calendars for upcoming virtual classes? Someone's asking.
Yeah, so I had originally, I believe Barry, I did send it to you, and you can put it in the chat. And so it's classes.nm.org, and you click on Kishwaukee Hospital or Leishman Center Healthy Kitchen or Healthy Eating. And so you can actually find those. And if Barry doesn't have it, I'd be happy to send all of that information to her after class. Absolutely.
Yes,
So-
thank you. I have those links and those will go out tonight following the program.
Awesome. Thanks.
Perfect.
Thanks, Barry. All right, so I'm setting my salmon to the side. And now I'm gonna make just about the easiest glaze because this is 5 ingredients. So we have our sweet potato, we have our broccoli, our salmon, and now we have mustard and maple syrup. So equal parts, 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. And then 2 tablespoons of mustard. You could use honey in this recipe if you wanted to. Honey is just a little bit more in your face about being sweet than maple syrup is. And I teach kids classes, so I always have to say, not the sugar water that we can find at the store that's, you know, in a plastic bottle. We're talking real maple syrup that you can still find at just about any grocery store. And now I have 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard. I love Dijon mustard when it comes to cooking as an ingredient. It's made with dark black or brown mustard seeds, and typically Dijon is made with white wine. It's a little sharper, it's a little spicier. I find it has a lot more flavor than say like yellow mustard that we put on hot dogs. That is much more acidic. You can absolutely use it, but I prefer just good old Dijon mustard. Now I'm going to mix this together and I'll add some black pepper. I'm a big black pepper fan, so I like to add that. And then I'll add just a little pinch of salt. You don't have to. But this is this really delicious, think about honey mustard. We love honey mustard. This is a maple mustard and it's delicious over the fish. And if you're using the sweet potatoes and broccoli, when it kind of falls off the fish and caramelizes around your vegetables, it's delicious, it's sweet, just that little bit of kick. So this is how easy the glaze is. So we're gonna put this over to the side again. All right, so now I'm gonna actually move on to our next recipe. So I'm just gonna move this over. And we are going to make banana bread. So 5 ingredient banana bread. So 5 ingredient banana bread. This banana bread can actually be made gluten-free. If you get gluten-free oats are naturally gluten-free, but this is just, I think we just have regular here today. So with this recipe, I want you to unlearn everything that baking has ever taught you. We're used to having 2 separate bowls, the dry and the wet. We're used to very lightly combining them together. When making quick breads, we kind of throw all of that out the window, and it made me cringe when I first tested this recipe, but it's a favorite amongst all of our instructors, all of our nurses, and it's so simple. And the truth is we need simple. Our American lifestyle is busy, busy, busy. We need this. So 5 ingredients. What is that? That is bananas, because it's a banana bread. So 3 bananas, 2 eggs, some maple syrup, some baking soda, and then some oats. And so you can do this in a food processor. You can do this in a blender. Today we have a Vitamix. I don't have a Vitamix at home, and I make it in just my, $15 Target mixer, and it works great. But I wanted to just show you how simple this is. So if you have grandkids or kids at home, this is a great recipe for them because it's something that you can kind of send in a backpack on the way to school. You can take this to work with you. Now this is a very moist bread. So if you're someone that likes a very cakey, dry bread, this might not be the recipe for you because this is it's dense, but it is delicious. So ideally with bananas, these aren't perfect. We want those cheetah print spots. We want those sugars to be out in the banana, but I have all 3 bananas in here. And then 2 eggs, cups of old-fashioned oats. Here in the Leishman Center, we try to use old-fashioned oats whenever possible. Quick oats are great. They've just been processed a little bit more. We are always looking to go a little less processed to make our bodies do the processing. So again, if someone in your life is gluten-free, then we're going to look at getting those gluten-free oats. So 2 cups of old-fashioned oats. My 4th cup of sugar, which I love because, you know, it's zucchini season. I've been making a lot of quick breads, and those breads have a lot of sugar in them. So I'm always trying to cut down for my family. I love that this one, a whole loaf, 1/4 cup of sugar. I know that the banana, of course, is sugar, but I love that it's a 1/4 cup of just added. And now 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Now, if you wanted to add extra ingredients, I love a good teaspoon of vanilla extract in here. If you want, once the batter is pureed, if you wanted to kind of lightly fold in some walnuts or some pecans, that's really delicious too. But this recipe just on its own is just about perfect. All right, so now I have my lid that I need to put on. And now I'm just going to puree this until it's all one cohesive batter. All right. So now I'm going to put this into my bread pan. I love good enamelware baking pans. You don't have to have these. Any bread loaf pan will do, but these I find things just stick way less. But to protect it even further, I like to lay in some parchment paper and kind of drape it over the sides so that at the end we just lift it up. Oh, there it is. Now, if you wanted to lightly oil it with just a little bit of olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, that's fine. Coconut oil, whenever we say that, we usually use it for greasing or for skin. Just remember all the research that's coming out, coconut oil is a saturated fat. So in our cooking and here, we usually like to use something a little more heart healthy. Yeah, Marla.
Rachel, did you substitute the 1/4 cane sugar for the pure maple syrup?
Oh, did it call for?
No, I'm asking.
Oh,
Did you or could you?
oh, absolutely, absolutely. We just need something sweet. And so, yeah, cane sugar would work fine. Brown sugar would work fine. It might affect the color of the bread a little bit, but absolutely. So now I'm just going to take my batter, pour it into my loaf pan. Make sure to scrape it out really well. And then you can, again, like I said, top it with some nuts. You could top it with some oats. In the recipe, you'll see it says top with sliced banana. I've done that. I find that the banana gets a little brown, so I would just rather have the bread as is. And so this is what it looks like going into our oven. So this is I make this bread a lot, so I just did it off the top of my head without my recipe. It goes into a 350-degree oven for about 30 to 35 minutes. It really depends on the heat of your oven. This oven runs hot, so it took only about 25 minutes, but it's just perfect. And what you end up getting, your end result, is a bread that's a little dark on the top, but comes out looking just like a loaf of bread. And again, it's a very wet loaf of bread, but it's delicious. Or moist, I should say wet. And then you can cut it into pieces for your family. And it's just delicious. So very few ingredients, very easy, not a lot of cleanup. Do you guys have any questions on this 5-ingredient banana bread?
Could you use this recipe with any other fruit other than banana?
I think so. I think that's what's most important is the egg. Now, I need to say I haven't tested it, but what's most important is that mixture of the egg, the baking soda, the oats, and having that little bit of sweet. I think that some other kind of fruit should have some sort of natural sugar because we're really counting on the banana. But say you wanted to do half banana, half butternut squash, or half pumpkin. I think that that could work. Or maybe if you do pumpkin, there's a little less natural sweet. So maybe just add in half a cup of maple syrup to trial it. But I think you could try. Yeah.
And when you basted the pan,
Mhm.
you just used a little bit of olive oil on your
Yeah.
brush?
You could do any kind of light neutral tasting oil. It's so little that you're not gonna know. So I just use my pastry brush, very little. And to be honest, this one that I showed you, I actually forgot this afternoon when I was baking it to oil the bottom of the pan. And you'll see how easy it came out. Having that parchment paper is just a game changer. Great questions, great questions. All right, so I think what we're gonna do before we start our last salad is we have about 3 minutes left on our vegetables. Let's get our dinner, our salmon dinner going again. So I'm just gonna move everything over. I like to clean up as I go, just like if you were in my home. I always like to make sure things are looking tidy. So what you're getting right now is a nice sneak peek into what we do. This is what my job is. We have a lot of people ask, but what do you really do? And I said, I'm lucky enough to get to teach cooking, every week. So this is my full-time job. And in here, we're always focusing on something different. So no matter what your interests are, no matter what maybe disease specific type programs you're looking for, hopefully we'll have something that interests you, piques your interest.
Some of the classes are seasonal.
Very seasonal. So tomorrow we have basil, then we're doing cancer fighting vegetables. Next week, tomatoes, fruit-based desserts. So the list just goes on. All right, so we're gonna bring back over our glaze and our salmon, and let's check those vegetables.
One of the participants said that he has to lower the temperature a little on the convection oven.
Yes,
And
that is
watch
true.
it more closely.
That is
so it
true.
doesn't burn.
Yeah, that is true. Absolutely. Because anything that if you're used to cooking in a regular oven, going to convection, I always burn things when I go to a convection because that's true. Lower the temp and watch it very closely, checking it early. All right, so this is perfect. After about 20 minutes, I see that my broccoli is starting to just caramelize a little bit. My potatoes you can tell are starting to wither, becoming a little more tender. Marla, let's actually go down to the second camera so they can get an up close look. All right, so can everybody see this now, Marla?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So what I'm gonna do, say you had 4 fillets. You're gonna make 4 little bird's nests. And I'm taking my salmon and just kind of laying it here.
Rachel, I'm sorry, but
Yeah,
I was answering the question and answer, and
Okay.
I forgot to answer in the chat. So
That's
we've got
okay.
several questions if we could go through those.
yeah, let's go through them.
Okay, so do you always use skinless fillets for the recipe?
Yeah, no, not necessarily. It's really about what I find for a good price. If you have skin on, skin is edible, but I find it only really enjoyable if it's crispy. So cook it skin side down. And then I always just kind of, once it's cooked, you can kind of just slide the fillet off of the skin. So you could do skin on.
Okay, thanks. And then could you use honey instead of maple syrup?
Yes.
For some of these recipes.
Absolutely. Honey in place of maple syrup, absolutely. Just know, we find that honey, we have to use a little bit. Sometimes we can use a little less sweet because it's just more in your face sweet.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if you can't eat eggs,
Yes.
then can you use an egg substitute?
Yeah. So I would try, you could do the flaxseed eggs. So you could do that. If you don't eat eggs, you're probably familiar, but for those of you who aren't, a chia or a flax egg, you take 1 tablespoon of chia seeds or flax seeds, add 3 tablespoons of water, mix, let it sit for 5 minutes. And what you end up is with like kind of a goop. I know that's not a nice word, but that's what it is. And you add it into your substitute, as a substitute for eggs into your baking dishes. I have used it in breads many times. I haven't used it in this bread, but it's worth a shot. It's worth a try. So good question.
And then what about adding cinnamon to the bread?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So cinnamon or like I said, the nuts, whatever you would normally add to bread, please do that and take liberties with it. As a teacher, I work around recipes, but I never truly follow them when I'm at home. I love to always adapt. So we always highly encourage that.
But those 5 ingredients are the base.
Yes, exactly. All right, so you'll see what we have here. Everything's ready to go back in the oven. I have my 2 fillets of salmon. And then remember, I had extra glaze. I like to put it over the fish and just kind of let it mingle with the vegetables. We're going to put it back in for just a little bit of time to cook our fish. Marla, let's actually come up. I want to talk about fish cookery while we put this back in real quick. Okay, so now cooking fish. This can be daunting to some people. Maybe some of you are really comfortable with it. That's amazing. Something that took me a while, I would say years. It took me years here to teach my first, fish class because I found it daunting. Fish can be hard, but there's a rule of thumb that I love, and it's for a higher heat application. So say you're grilling or roasting around the 425 range, it's 10 minutes for every inch thick of fish. So say you have a very thin fillet, then you check it first at 5 minutes, which doesn't seem like it's that long, but this is a really good method to at least start getting you somewhere. Sometimes we just don't know where to start and we're left with really dry fish. So about 10 minutes for every inch thick your fish is. Now, this doesn't count if you have like a sauce, you're cooking it in a sauce or poaching it. It doesn't count if you're doing empapillote with the paper, but for like grilling or baking at a higher temp, about 10 minutes for every inch thick. So that's what I did. I did about 11 minutes. It was just a hint thicker, and we're going to see what it looks like. What we're looking for is that the juices run clear. All of the fish is the same color. And if you want to be really technical, you can get out your thermometer and you can test and make sure that it does hit that 140 mark. So, all right. Any questions?
Yes. Instead of mustard, what could you use as a substitute?
I think that if you wanted to do, let me think about this. I would probably do a little vinegar, maybe not as much, but when cooking fish, I always like to have some sort of acid with it to kind of tenderize. Vinegar has a little bit of that, white wine. I think you could do a little bit of vinegar in there if you wanted to, or if you just wanted to do like maple, you could do that. So good question.
And how long are you baking the salmon in the oven?
So I'm doing about 10 minutes. You'll see your recipe says 15, it says about 10 to 15 minutes. I just always, as a teacher, teach about 10 minutes for every inch thick. So I put it in for 10, we'll check it together so that we can all kind of see what it looks like. All right, so now On to our last recipe. And I apologize, bouncing back and forth between recipes. I don't typically like to do that, but I wanted to show you this in real time. Yeah,
And what do you think about dark chocolate chips in your bread?
always, always. My husband doesn't like it, but I love it. So just go for it. Do it. I wouldn't blend them. Same with the nuts, just stir them in. But yeah, I support that decision. All
Me
right.
too.
Yeah. All right. So our last recipe is one that is so simple. Sometimes I feel silly teaching it, but it's a go-to. And this is a great lunch to pack. It's light. It has a plant-based protein in it. This is also a great side dish. And there's a lot of different things you can add to it if you want to go over that 5 ingredients to really make it shine even more. So a good can of beans is always one of my budget-friendly, healthy foods. Beans are just an incredible protein source, really high in fiber, lots of different nutrients, folate. So we have some beans. You could use any type of white bean you like, but know that not all white beans are created equally. We have chickpeas or garbanzo beans, which are really meaty. They have a little more chew. And then you have cannellini beans at the other end of the spectrum that are very tender, very soft. And then you have kind of Great Northern, which are in the middle. So use whatever kind of bean you enjoy. I'm a huge fan of garbanzo beans. And so when we're choosing beans, canned beans, we always look for no salt added or low sodium. The amount of salt that it cuts down, just having that word low sodium on there, is significant. But no matter what type of bean you have, always rinse them. You can actually reduce the amount of sodium in a can of beans by about 15 to 20%, just by giving them a good rinse. So whether it's in a fine mesh strainer, whether it's in a colander, just give them a good rinse. So into my bowl, I'm putting my rinsed chickpeas. Now I'm going to add, because this is a perfect summer salad for this time of year, some tomatoes. So it calls for a half cup of diced tomatoes. I see there's an error and it says halved. What originally it said was cherry tomatoes halved, but just about a half cup of tomatoes. Whenever I cut tomatoes, whether they're big beefsteak tomatoes or cherry tomatoes, I always try to use a serrated knife. Serrated knives are great for anything that has a really delicate flesh, such as peaches, of course, bread, tomatoes. So I'm going to do about a half cup. But again, if I have these tomatoes, I don't want them to go to waste. I'll just add extra in, and it's just more veggies. Then we have 1 cucumber. This is a pretty huge cucumber. This is the English variety. I love this because we can leave the skin on. It's not as thick. I like that there's less seeds. And so I'll usually use about 3/4 to a half of one of these cucumbers if I'm not using just like the generic normal bush cucumber. Now I want to mimic the cut of my cucumber to be kind of similar to those halved cherry tomatoes. So again, whenever we have anything that rolls, cut it down lengthwise, give it a nice firm base, steady base, and then I'm going to use half moons. So if all you have at home is cucumbers, you can make this with cucumbers and then just maybe, more cucumber, no tomato. Or if you have bell peppers and you just want to use bell peppers instead of tomatoes, that's great too. So I'm going to get a spoon, spatula, and just give this a quick toss. So now you can kind of envision, if we weren't just looking at 5 ingredients, what could you add to this? So I think fresh parsley would be amazing. Fresh basil would be great. Dill is amazing, delicious in here. Kalamata olives, if you want kind of that salty bite. If you love cheese, a little bit of feta cheese would be delicious in here. But the truth is, just this with our little bit of oil and vinegar, salt and pepper, you have a really delicious side dish featuring some local produce, if you can find a farm stand right now. Now, it says one tablespoon of vinegar. It doesn't specify what kind, just because we know some of you might have white wine vinegar, some may have red wine vinegar. Whatever you have, you can use. Balsamic would taste good, however, it would alter the color of your beans. So I try to stay away from that.
What would you think about adding mint to that?
I think that would be really good. I make a Israeli couscous salad that has this exact mix with couscous, mint, and parsley. And so I think that would be amazing. I always love a good dish that can include mint because I grow mint. I love to garden. And my mint, I have a hard time finding uses for other than just like tea or, mojitos. All right, so a little bit of vinegar and then a tablespoon of olive oil. I will say I'm gonna leave my vinegar bottle right here just because there is a chance that when I taste and adjust, I may need a little bit more vinegar. I really like, I like acid in my beans and my vegetables. Some fresh cracked black pepper, nothing crazy. If you have a really great dried herb selection at your house, dried oregano would be really good in this. Dried Italian seasoning would be nice in this. A little salt. However, if you're using those full salt beans, then I wouldn't. I would just leave it as is. But if you have low sodium beans that we did have, we were lucky enough to find, you could add a little pinch of salt. Now, this is it. 5 ingredients, but it is amazing for a nice lunch. It's nice for a nice side dish. You have your protein. Feel free to kind of bulk it up like we talked about with herbs, feta cheese, kalamata, olives, any other vegetables you would like to add. So delicious. Any questions right now?
No, not about the salad.
Okay,
No.
okay, sounds good.
Someone was very surprised that there was no flour in the bread.
Yeah, and so when I tested this, I told you I was really hesitant, but I was like, I want to try this because it's a 5 ingredient recipe, and it worked. And so blending the oats kind of are mimicking oat flour.
Mhm.
And so it's flourless, but is it? I mean, we do have the oats in there. So I am going to add just like a little bit of parsley because I want to show you how pretty it is. So this time of year, if you're lucky enough to grow or find a farmer or go to a farm stand and you see the Wheaton French Market, one of my favorites, you may see me there soon. We make the drive Saturday mornings. Anything with a long stem, we put into a mason jar. So this could be cilantro, long stemmed basil, parsley, and we keep it in the jar and it actually lasts a lot longer. Okay, so just that little bit of parsley even made it look that much more fabulous. All right. So now I just had our timer go off.
Yep.
Bring our bread out here.
How long do the herbs last in the jar?
Yeah, great question. So it depends what you want to do when you get them home. We wash our herbs, except for basil. I don't wash. Basil's just much too delicate. But say parsley or cilantro, wash them, spread them out, let them air dry. And then I always trim the ends like I do flowers before I put them into water, and then store them in the refrigerator with like a plastic bag over the top. It could be a Ziploc, it could be a Myers plastic bag. And then change out the water as it starts to look murky, as you would flowers. And we have herbs that last 3 weeks versus, 4 days in just the little plastic bag we get them in from the store. All right. So what we have here, how's that view, Marla? Can they see it? Okay. So we have a nice glazed salmon. You can see it's kind of bubbling up around the vegetables as I talked about earlier. I'm going to grab a fork. Woo. not gonna use that fork. I'm gonna grab a fork, and again, this was about 1 inch, and I'm gonna just flake it. And I'm gonna,
It looks lovely, Rachel.
oh, good. And you can see everything's the same color. It cooked in that 10 to 11 minutes, very quick. And remember that when you pull something out of the oven, it will continue cooking for about 2 more minutes after it's out, just because the pan is hot. So that residual heat will really continue cooking it. So this is our dinner. So how delicious. So I have a plate here that I want to dish up for you guys. If you ever come to join us in person, you actually get tastings and the recipes. So I'm just going to take a little half of the piece with my broccoli, my potatoes. I'm trying to pick up as much of that glaze as I can. And then,
And Rachel, you said for the salad, for a substitute for the cucumbers, you said
you
like
could use
beans or peppers or whatever.
peppers, tomatoes. If you wanted something green, you can use really thinly sliced raw zucchini. A lot of people use it like that, but any kind of vegetable. So maybe it's just tomatoes and peppers. Maybe it's just cucumbers. Maybe it's just tomatoes. So here are the 3 recipes that we made today. Our salad, our salmon dinner, and our bread, all made with 5 ingredients or less. We thank you so much. I believe we're just right at time. Yeah, Marla.
Any tips for keeping the basil fresh?
Yeah, so basil, I actually have some over here. So we're all really lucky. All the people that work in here were gardeners. So for virtual classes, this is actually from Marla's garden. Basil likes to be warm. If it gets too cold, then you're gonna get that browning spots. It likes to be warm. It doesn't like to be overly wet. And so I don't usually wash my basil if I need to until right before. Store it room temperature, just a little bit of water in a glass. And if you have a basil plant, I don't like to pick it until I need it. But say you want like bouquets for a dinner, then yeah, this is what you would do, or you're getting it at a farmer's market. So keep it warm, not too cold, doesn't like to be wet. And again, a little cup of water.
And Rachel, you do the same thing for green onions too, right?
Yeah, green onions as well. Yep, yep. Just trim off anything that looks tired at the top of the green onion. All right. Well, it's been really, really fun to be with you, Wheaton Public Library. Thanks again to Barry for contacting us and setting this up. We hope you guys enjoy the class. We hope we see you in some upcoming programs. Like I said, every week is just completely different, but our virtual classes are Wednesday and Thursday. We thank you. Thank you so much. We hope to see you guys again soon and have a wonderful, wonderful Tuesday night. I'm going to hand it back over to Barry.
Well, thank you so much, Rachel and Marla, too, for helping field all those questions for us. We've just got lots of gratitude going in the chat and the Q&A. And just a reminder that I will be sending out an email following tonight's presentation, including those recipes again, as well as the links to the website so that you can join in on some more of these wonderful classes. But with that, I think we can go ahead and say goodnight. Oh, I will say, if you're watching the recording of this program, we had the privilege of being able to record this one. If you're watching the recording and would like that recipe and the link, just email me at ce@wheatonlibrary.org. That's CE for community engagement at wheatonlibrary.org, and I'd be happy to send those things out to you. But with that, we'll say good night. Everybody stay safe and healthy, and we hope to see you again soon. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.